Welcome and welcome back. We're moving on to the final ward of the backside now, the Miracle Tower. If you're unfamiliar with a certain mathematical concept, this might be a tough one for you, but it has consistent rules that you can learn, of course. As always, there will be chapters and timestamps in the description, so you can jump around to any level if there's anything specific that you need help with. And before we begin, spoiler warning for bulk doors, master keys, blank doors, blast doors, exact keys, ores and door effects, golden doors, brown doors, pure keys and doors, negative keys and doors, sign flip keys, negative brown keys, bicolor doors, star and unstar keys, negative master keys, combo doors, everything about glitch keys and doors, and lockless doors. If you're unfamiliar with any of those concepts, either play the game yourself or watch my respective videos. But without any further ado, okay, it's time for the probably most strange mechanic in the entire game, rotor keys, and more specifically, imaginary keys. Time for a brief math lesson. I symbolizes the square root of -1. Rotor keys are, as the text on it implies, multiplying their respective key count by I. Imaginary keys themselves aren't particularly different from normal keys in how they work at just a base level, but you'll see shortly how they can add another layer onto puzzles. For now though, we just need to use it to get a slightly different type of key. Working backwards, we need 4 white to leave, but because of the rotor key before its door, we'll have to stall them before that. Thus, meaning we have to get the 4 white before going through the top route. And since we know we need the rotor pink, black, and black sign flip, that means we'll have to start our cyan with at least 6i. So we'll just open the 2-lock pink, then one of the 6i doors, and start our cyan. From there, it's quite easy, just open the cyan doors, blank white, then take your whites, start them, grab your black, and take all the remaining keys so you can make a clean exit. Also, negative rotor keys exist, basically working, as it says, as both a sign flip and a normal rotor key. You can also think of it as multiplying the count by -i if that helps. Now, for this level, we'll have to open 3 sets of doors at the start to determine whether we want a negative or positive rotor key for the various colors that we'll be getting. To figure that out, we'll unsurprisingly have to look forward to the right side. Once we get there, we'll be set to -2 blacks, and need to gain 3 more to leave. That means we'll have to open 12 doors, and as is often the case, we get exactly 12 of the assorted keys once we cross over. So, we'll have to find a combination of 3 routes that perfectly uses all of them. Firstly, to start illuminating things, the third one down contradicts itself by needing a normal purple after one -i purple, so we can mark that one off immediately. Next, every route needs at least 1 orange of some sort, so the route at the top requiring 2 can be excluded as well, leaving only 4 options. Finally, since we know we have to spend an odd amount of pinks, and 3/4 of the routes have 2, we must use the route with a single -i pink, thus also forcing us to use the other 2 routes with -i pink. So now, we can open up the needed rotor keys, those being, from top to bottom, negative orange, positive purple, and negative pink, then cross over and take our various keys, and just start opening as much as you can before using any given rotor key. And the last little bit to think about is that you need to take the purple rotor first, since there's still normal orange and pink behind it. But afterwards, everything can be rotored and cleared to get you out of here. This level briefly shows that imaginary keys don't have an OR, hence the challenge of this level. We're forced to start by taking a red, but before we continue up top, you can see that there's actually no way to get more reds after that next key. So we just need to rotor our red now, and take the others so we can melt the cyan. But now the real challenge begins. We need to get rid of 30 brown and clear that cyan door to leave. There's an even 30 and 5 lock doors, but one of the 5 locks is gated by a 3-lock, blue, which, if opened, would ruin our count, even with the 5 glitch keys. So we'll have to lose 30 some other way. Also, we can't open the 6-lock cyan either with brown, since it'd mess up the count as well, so we'll need to grab the 6 cyan at some point. That means that the 3-lock blue will need to be opened with blue, thus forcing us to open up the 5-lock in the top left as well, and grab the blue. That also means that the 5-lock blue must be opened, so that also is excluded. And so finally, we can see that we only have 20 keys worth of doors, but we have 25 keys. 30 total if you take the glitch though. I'm sure you see it as well. If we coast the tin eye door and then rotor the brown in that order, remember that orders aren't there for imaginary keys, we'll be able to open it. That'll remove effectively 10 more keys, but again, we need to open the blues normally before one of the needed 5 locks. So we need to open that tin eye near last, so we can use it to put the glitch state on brown and get us those last 5 brown for the 5 lock. So we can get our cyan and get out. I must confess, I've been holding something back because it wasn't relevant yet. You can use rotor keys to make things real again, because if you recall, I is merely the square root of -1. So, since rotor keys are multiplying by I, if you rotored some imaginary keys, you'd then take away the imaginary aspect and just end up multiplying the key count by -1. Since again, square root of -1, a square root when multiplied by itself, is just the original number. Also worth noting is that you can also have both real and imaginary keys at the same time. They'll both be affected by sign flips and rotors, so just keep it in mind as a possibility. This can get pretty complicated eventually, so make sure you understand the concept of I and juggling both real and imaginary keys for basically this entire world. As for the whole solving this level thing, we quite clearly need to use -100 to open the glitch door guarding the exit, since we're forced into taking -50 glitch keys right at the start, and there's no way to get 50 of anything else to supplement the -50. We obviously can't reach the other -50 without opening the door, so we'll need to preserve the glitch state, and more specifically we'll have to preserve the bicolored door on the right. It's the only door with a glitch on it, and all that, so just by default. So then the real question will be, how do we reach the brown rotor in the bottom right? We know the glitch rotor must be for brown as well, so green only has 2 rotors available. Now the confusing part. We've already locked in the glitch rotor as brown, yet it seems as if we'd need 3 green rotors to get to the brown rotor. First 1 to reach 10i from the positive, then another 2 to reach 10. But that's where something I mentioned during the math section kinda comes back into play. Again, I'll give you a few seconds to pause and try to figure it out for yourself. So, while yes, it is impossible to get through those doors with just 3 rotors the way we were trying to, that doesn't mean it's impossible in general. Firstly, after we grab whichever green we need first, we'll know we'll then need to grab the brown, preserve the glitch, coast all the doors up top, and open the 2 locks, and flip 2 imaginaries to eventually open the 2i lock. That'll end up getting rid of our brown aura and leave us to just open the green doors. And here is where an important detail I briefly mentioned comes into play. We can hold both real and imaginary keys, aka a complex number of keys. So if one were to grab a rotor key with real keys, then took more real keys afterwards, we'd end up with an imaginary and real count of keys at the same time. So with this knowledge, we just need to find a way to end up with specifically 10 plus 10i green at the end of it all. Which, looking at it, can be done via starting off with -10, rotoring to -10i, taking the remaining 10, which brings us to -10i plus 10, and finally rotoring again to perfectly 10 plus 10i. So take the -10, grab the brown to coast doors and open a couple, and take your brown rotor. Then rotor green, take the 10 and rotor again. Now you have your green aura and thus can clear them off the doors and open all of them. Finally, you can rotor your brown to uncoast the bicolored door, thus bringing the glitch state back to default, and you can take your -50 to leave. And despite being relevant in the previous level, it is being officially mentioned here, complex numbers. Honestly, I'm not really happy about that arrangement, but whatever. We're given -17 orange and -2 masters, and have to reach 9 plus 9i white and -9 minus 9i orange. We'll need to reach a few things for certain, those being the bicolored 9i doors and the right rotor. The rotor needs to be taken after one open of the bicolored white, meaning the combo door above will need to be cleared out first. We have to use it to get to 4, meaning we have to first get down to -4. That can be done by simply opening the -5, then using a master on the combo to open it twice. Then you can spend your 4 and safely take the -99 afterwards. From there, you can easily get the needed counts by mastering and opening the white once, using the rotor, opening it again, and lastly, opening the bicolored in the top right for the remaining -9i to leave. A new door type and a new revelation. Blast doors we've known only remove our real keys, either negative or positive, based on the door type, and now we can have plus doors to remove our imaginary keys. So going through these first doors, we end up back down to 0 purple and need to get up to 16 plus 16i of them. I'd recommend solving this one yourself, as I can't really discuss it without immediately giving away a major part of the solve, so now's your chance. Ready? Okay, so we can effectively represent each of these doors as a multiplication onto our keys, either imaginary or real or both. So doing so ends up with all of this. I'm not going to read it all off, but I will briefly mention my mind just decided the best way to write them is having real numbers as x and imaginary as y, with the result of the open being what's written near it, just in case the text was confusing. So now that we have a legend, we can exclude a few doors entirely. 2 because they multiply a number by 0, so we obviously can't take those. And the last one because it's obviously just impossible to have both positive and negative of both either real or imaginary numbers, so can't do that one. And so then we just need to effectively multiply our key count by 16 on both real and the imaginary front. Thus, logically, we need to open all of the negative and positive 2 times doors twice each, which thus determines where our master keys will be used. We can only start by opening the top left door, getting us to -1 minus 1i. We can't get to -x again until we reach the centermost door, which means using all of the 2 wide doors first. And of course, to use our 2 wide door fully, we'll need access to the -2 wide door, thus meaning we need to clear the x minus y door in the bottom right. To do that, we can simply open a copy of the 2 wide door, then open the x minus y door. From here, it's just going back and forth to get our proper amount of keys, but by the end of it, we'll have 16 plus 16i keys and can get out. Another door type, very similar to the blast, the all door. Instead of only removing imaginary or real keys, it just removes all of them. It doesn't even care about whether it's positive or negative. After getting past our basic doors, though, we now have to get to 2,618 orange. How fun. So pro tip for puzzles like these, if you need to gauge how many keys you'll get from the big combo doors like these, just a bunch of blasts, just subtract 1 from the amount of locks that are there, and then that's the negative multiplication that it will do to your keys. For example, the combo door with 3 all locks, subtract 1, you get 2, and thus it'll multiply your orange key count by -2. So repeating that, we have a -17, -14, -11, -7, -5, -3, and of course, -2 multiplying door. And so now we just need to find the factors that multiply into 2,618. I just decided to start big, so I divided by 17, and that does in fact work with the result being 154. Then 154 can be divided by 11, which thus works with into 14, and of course 14 is divisible by 2 and 7, so just open those 4 doors in any order and you'll get to 2,618 keys and can leave. Now, if you've been playing along up to this world, you'll probably remember that little thingy that we actually picked up back in the hub of this world, the Lens of Truth. It does indeed have a use, and by pressing S, you'll see the imaginary view of every door. As you can see, the whole both having real and imaginary copies applies to doors and keys, as is often the case with this game. The cyan door at the start has a normal X1 copy of the door, just being the full lock cyan, but if you go into the imaginary view, you can see that there's also an additional 1i copy of the door, and for the record, if it has both real and imaginary copies, you can only open the imaginary copy in the eye view. Now, to actually work on the level, we first demonstrate using the eye view to get rid of our 4i cyan, then we'll give in -2i masters and 6i red. In the eye view mode, you can spin these imaginary masters, which, as you'd suspect, given that the real negative masters add a copy, these do as well, but on the eye side. But notably, they also multiply the door type by I. This effect is most clearly seen on the bicolored red on the bottom, where, if you master it, the I's copy cost is -6 cyan, since 6i times I equals -6. Which, speaking of, we can identify that as a definite master usage, since we need some way to get positive red to actually defrost the blank white. That means we'll need -6 cyan somehow, and the only way to gain any cyan is through the bicolored cyan up top, which will give us -6i cyan. We could then loader them to 6 and effectively sign flip them with the combo door to get -6, thus letting us get some red. You could also do it the other way around since it's all just multiplication, but But wait, how will we get rid of our -6 afterwards? Well, recall that the all locks just get rid of everything no matter what, so by that logic, adding a copy, no matter whether it's imaginary or real, will still get rid of everything. Basically just making another all lock. So you can simply add an I copy, do as discussed to get red, then flip back over using the I copy to spin them on the 4 and 2 lock so you can leave. Browns again, oh boy. Need to get rid of all the brown, both real and imaginary, to leave, and we can add a couple imaginary copies to help with that. We also have one positive master, so we can skip a door if need be. Now to begin solving, doing some brief modular math, nearly every door is a multiple of 4, so 55 mod 4 is 3, meaning we'll need to open the 2 lock and a 1 lock with our brown. As for how to get rid of the remaining 52, just doing some basic math there simply is not enough locks to get rid of them without using the 32, so we can use that 1 lock and just work to get rid of the 20 keys instead. Which thus will force us to open the 16 locked and use an imaginary copy of the -4i door, since the 4i's door imaginary would be -4, and thus it would uncurse itself when we try to open it. We can also safely master pass the -4i after opening the imaginary copy, since we can't open a -i door until we have 0 real brown, which of course is gated behind this door. Now for our imaginary keys, these can be pretty easily cleared with a coast 4i up top, an imaginary copy of the -16 door, and the coast -8i door, with the caveat on the -8i being we have to open it after we get rid of all of our real keys, since otherwise it'll be uncoast. And with the final sign flip and door opened, we can skedaddle. 3 pure keys means we can only go down 3 routes, and we'll have to go down them fully. But somehow we need to get -15 minus 7i black and go back down to 0 white. Seems a bit paradoxical, no? Well, there is still that imaginary key, but what could be a useful imaginary copy here? Well, first, we clearly need at least the 2nd and 4th route for the white keys, and then moreover, since we know we have to go to 0, the top route must be first. That means we only have 1 bicolored black though, but if we were to add an imaginary copy to it, yes, it has become a plus door. Since a positive blast door is just getting rid of all your real keys, an imaginary copy of it would just be getting rid of all of your positive imaginary keys. So, now we take the 20 white first, go to 15 from the 5 lock, and open the blast door and the 15 lock. Then take the 7i white and open the plus door, as well as the remaining doors up top, and then you can just easily leave. But this one will give a -3 masters and 18 purple, and unsurprisingly need to just use all of our masters right away on the purple door to cross, as well as opening all 3 of the copies that we add to get to 0 purple. But now, we need to get rid of 6i. We'll of course need a -i master to clear them, thus also giving us 1 regular master. But then, wait, how do we get rid of -6 purple? I guess we can try to use a positive I master since we haven't tried that before. Granted, that'll get rid of our positive one to do so. Well, that ended up with a -6 idol. I guess because you're opening a non-existent version thanks to the eye view, so now it's over-opened. Well, then that makes me wonder, could you over-open the real side as well? Quickly resetting in order to do that, we'll have to use 2 master keys on it while having an I copy to keep the door around. We can pretty easily get those 2 by just grabbing the bottom 3 masters after crossing, which will let us add the 6i copy still to get rid of our I keys, and since we won't have another opportunity to have an I copy until it's too late, we have to use the 2 masters now before opening the I copy. And sure enough, we now have a -6 lock purple available, which, fun fact, we actually saw an over-open door way back in World 8. To speak a little bit more in depth on over-opening doors, you can think of them as going negative on the amount of copies of doors, which you know, you probably already will, but both literally for the key count and in a more abstract sense. Generally, if the amount of doors in a certain position is 0, then there won't be a door there and it's just taken out of play. But now that we can preserve the door's existence thanks to having a second imaginary amount of those doors, we can actually open and see the door that doesn't have a copy. Thus, since positive master keys open a door, when you use it while the door count is 0, you end up with -1 copies of the door, which also applies to the lock for the door since everything is actually math. This is also why adding a door with negative masters opened that door back in World 8, as well as this one if you wanted to. You're effectively adding a door, and thus you would be taking it back to 0 in this case. Of course, it all works the same as demonstrated for the eye view, but with eye masters instead. Back to the level now, we can open the 6 eye door now, grab our -6, and then we'll need to preemptively add a -6 eye copy before going to 0. That means we'll have to over-open since the eye view's door is a 6 eye lock. So grab the 1 eye master, use it, and then you can safely open all the purple doors and leave. While this one's a bit of a visual mess at first, it gets pretty clear once you break it down. The first row may look completely irrelevant at first, but it effectively works to check that you don't have any 2 keys of the same count, such as 12 red and 12 green. We're going to have to keep this in mind for later, as it'll work to exclude something. For each gate in the second and onwards row, we'll give in 30 pink keys and need to remove them via variously colored combo doors. We need exactly 15 eye cyan by the end, so we'll have to open 15 total of these combo doors, and no more than that. For the final combo door, we can't use any master keys, since we're unstarred by then and still have a -1 master to open, so we can immediately know we're only getting 1 eye from that, and must take 30 blue there. So we can just immediately make a few copies of the bicolored blue to get those keys. This still leaves another 14 eye to get amongst the other 3 combos though, and recall that we'll have to have every key at a different count, so everything will have to be different factors of 30 on top of that. So what are the factors of 30, I guess? Excluding 30, 2, and 1 for obvious reasons, or hopefully obvious, they're 15, 10, 6, 5, and 3. Having 3 on a key would require 10 opens, thus leaving the other 2 doors to have 4 opens total, which cannot be completed, as it either have 1 and 3 opens, which we can't do since the 30 keys are already posted with blue, or 2 and 2, which we can't have since that would be 2 keys at the same count. So we can just exclude 3 as an option. Translating the remaining factors into opens, they'll take 2, 3, 5, and 6 opens respectively, and thus logically, since at least 1 count must be odd but the total needs to be even, we'll have to use the 10 and 6 keys, leaving another 6 opens, and thus the 5 keys must be taken on the remaining count. So arrange those key counts as you see fit amongst your keys, and you can freely walk through this level as discussed. I'll let it play out as well because I find it satisfying. So somehow we need to get down to 0 cyan via practically, if not literally, any combination of copies of our singular door. To run down the types of doors we have, negative eye doors have negative plus and positive blast, eye doors are plus and negative blast, and of course negative real doors are negative plus and blast doors. So yes, literally anything can be done to our keys effectively. But we need to get both real and eye keys to something that is divisible either by 5 or 6. But the question is how? And that question I was honestly unable to solve in the way Watson probably intended. But for the record, I did solve this level myself. So, as per usual, you can thank the Lockpick wiki for this explanation in particular. As the flavor text for this level hammers in, This has something to do with complex numbers, which is nothing new, but most specifically, a complex equation at that. We can effectively represent this scenario as a complex equation, specifically 6 plus 5i times x plus yi is equal to 58 minus 33i, where x is our real copies and y imaginary ones of the combo dole. So doing some basic distribution, we end up with 6x plus 6yi plus 5xi minus 5y is equal to 58 minus 33i. Then, separating the equation to real and imaginary parts, we end up with the equations 6x minus 5y is equal to 58 and 5x plus 6y is equal to negative 33. Ignoring the I on the latter since it doesn't really hold any relevance to the solve now since you can just divide it out. And now we're just solving for a system of linear equations, which we've already done back in Rule 7, but then we had to deal with 3 of them at the same time. Granted, the multiplication factor is kind of gross here, but regardless, by multiplying the first by negative 5/6, we can cancel out the x and be left with 61y is equal to negative 488, which simplifies to y is equal to negative 8. Then, solving with y as negative 8 in the formal equation, we can find that x is equal to 3, and thus we need 3 copies of the real dole and negative 8 copies of the imaginary doles. As for how I did it, so you can simply add 8 negative I copies to the dole, open them all, thus reaching a clean 18 plus 15I count of cyan. So now we just need to flip around our purple so we have 6 plus 5I, which only takes 1 rotor key. Now we can just open 3 copies of our dole and reach 0 and leave. It's a lot less smart, but I appreciate that it wasn't horribly hard to do without the knowledge of the complex equation. Well, in my humble opinion, I don't think this word was that bad. It felt more like just little math puzzles on the hardest ones, rather than any like horribly complex logic, which was a nice cooldown from World 10's pretty much just pure logic puzzles. It helps, though, that at this point I'm in college and have been taking math that's actually kind of hard for a good couple years now, so, you know, learning about I and memorizing everything that comes with it wasn't exactly a hurdle for me, and moreover, I already did learn about it, so. But speaking of college, you might have seen, because I think I put it in like the description of World 9's video, I'll be starting back up pretty soon at this point, so there will probably be a longer gap between videos after this one. Hopefully, of course, it's not too terrible, but I wanted to give fair warning nonetheless. I can't say for certain, though, since our next challenge is something different.